Let me start with something simple, something so ordinary you probably never stop to think about it. You have a birth certificate. Your parents have one. Your grandparents probably do too. For most of us, that document feels as natural as breathing. It proves that you exist. It proves the world recognizes the moment you were born. You use it to apply for a passport, to get a driver's license, to open financial accounts, or to interact with government systems. It feels like a birthright. But here's the strange part. For most of human history, thousands of years of civilization, empires, trade networks, and complex governments, no one had birth certificates. Not individuals anyway. And then suddenly, within roughly 2 or 3 decades at the start of the 20th century, nearly every industrialized country on Earth adopted systems to record every birth, almost at the same time. That's where the questions start. To understand how unusual this shift was, we have to look backward. Even powerful ancient states didn't record individuals at birth the way modern governments do. In ancient Rome, for example, the state conducted censuses, but those were household records. They tracked families, property, and taxation units. The focus wasn't the individual newborn, it was the household. During medieval Europe, births were often recorded by churches. Parish priests kept track of baptisms, marriages, and deaths. But those were church records, not government identity documents. And most importantly, people didn't carry them. You weren't required to show proof of birth to participate in society. So if enormous civilizations could manage millions of people without birth certificates, something important must have changed. In the United States, the push for standardized birth registration accelerated in the early 1900s. In 1902, the U.S. Census Bureau created what was called the Birth Registration Area. States that could prove they recorded at least 90% of births were included. By 1915, only a handful of states met that standard. But by 1933, just 3 decades later, every state in the country had joined. In only 31 years, the United States built a system capable of recording nearly every birth within its borders. During that same period, several other major systems were being created. The Federal Reserve was established in 1913. The federal income tax became permanent through the 16th Amendment in 1913. World War I draft registration began in 1917, and the Social Security system would arrive in 1935. Each of these systems required something essential: reliable identification of individuals. And quietly, the birth certificate became the foundation for that identity. Here's where things get interesting. In everyday conversation, the words human being and person sound like the same thing, but in law, they aren't identical. A human being is simply a biological reality. A person, in legal language, is an entity recognized by the law as having rights and responsibilities. Corporations can be legal persons. Cities can be legal persons. Governments themselves can function as legal persons. The term comes from the Latin word persona, the mask worn by actors in Roman theater. It represented the role someone played within the system, and that raises an intriguing possibility. The birth certificate may not simply record that a human exists. It may create the legal identity that the state interacts with. The document becomes the official record of the person recognized by law. Once you think about it this way, the role of the birth certificate becomes clearer. It enables taxation, not just the general awareness that people exist, but the ability to assign a unique taxpayer identity to each individual. It enables conscription. When governments needed to draft millions of soldiers during the World Wars, they required verifiable records of age. It enables public benefit systems, Social Security, public education enrollment, healthcare programs, pensions. Every one of these systems depends on reliable identification. And the birth certificate becomes the root document from which all other identity records grow. Your Social Security number, your passport, your driver's license. They all trace back to that original record of birth. Once a birth certificate exists, it becomes the starting point of a long administrative chain. Marriage records link to it. Tax records link to it. Property records may reference identity documents that trace back to it. Eventually, death certificates close the record. From the state's perspective, the birth certificate is the opening entry in a ledger that follows a person through life. Not in a sinister way necessarily, but in an administrative one. It makes individuals legible to the systems that govern modern societies. One of the most puzzling aspects of this transformation isn't that it happened, it's how quickly and universally it happened. Countries with very different legal systems adopted remarkably similar registration systems around the same historical moment. The United States, Britain, France, Germany, Canada, Australia. Different governments, different cultures, yet all arrived at the same administrative structure, the individual as the basic unit of registration, recorded at birth. Was this simply the natural evolution of modern bureaucracies? Or was it the result of ideas spreading through international policy networks, academic institutions, and public health movements of the era? Historians generally point to the rise of statistics, public health reforms, and industrial-era governance. But the speed of adoption still surprises many researchers. Before modern registration systems, identity was often rooted in relationships. People were known through family, ties, communities, churches, or local institutions. Recognition came from belonging. Birth registration shifted that structure. Now identity also exists within a national administrative system. You are not only recognized by your community, you are recognized by the state. That shift helped make modern systems possible: public education, social welfare, taxation, and national citizenship. But it also quietly changed how societies organize and track human life. None of this means birth certificates are sinister. In fact, they solved many practical problems. They helped track infant mortality. They improved public health data. They made large social systems possible. But it's still worth asking the deeper questions. Why did so many countries adopt nearly identical systems so quickly? How did the individual, rather than the household or community, become the primary unit of government administration? And how did such a profound change happen with so little public philosophical debate? Today the system feels completely normal. We enter it the moment we're born, long before we can understand what it means. The document that anchors our legal identity wasn't created by us. It was created about us. And once you notice that difference, it becomes hard to stop thinking about it.